Dr. Zuhdi Jasser is founder of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, which describes itself as the most prominent American Muslim organization directly confronting the ideology of political Islam. Zuhdi is an expert on how radical Islam and its followers have found traction in the Western world, the dangers of which we have been warning for decades. He has warned about the critical nature of alliances, dangerous enemies within our own governments and communities. He is a truth teller despite having walked through fire to get his important message across. Zuhdi.
Thank you, Raheel, and thank you, Secure Canada. It's an honor to be with all of you, and to come here from Phoenix is, it's a little cooler up here, but it's great to be with you. I'm humbled to be included with what I consider family. My wife, Ghada, and my three kids, Zach, Zaina, and Zaid, consider you, Raheel, and Esra, and many of you, and the extended family here in Toronto to be our family. I want to give you a little bit of a narrative arc, since I'm using a baseball phenomenon. I'm sort of batting cleanup here, which is an honorable thing to do. And as a Navy guy, I served 11 years in the armed forces, and as a physician, it always broke my heart to treat our combat veterans and those in active duty, to put them back into the field and only fix them to get them back out there to hopefully stay alive. But the SEALs taught me one thing. They taught me that ultimately you can have twigs that each can be broken individually, but you put 9 twigs together and you wrap them with a very small little thread, and they can't be broken together. And that little thread, as much as it can be quickly torn, brings together 9 very different twigs that can come together as a unit. What binds us together? How do we move forward as you leave here this evening? Time is running out. Wars, we've cited many of the dates that we now, how many of the days of the calendar are we going to remember from 9/11 to 7/7 to 10/7, and how many more? Before we now start to figure out that maybe we're done playing defense. Maybe it's time to play offense. From wars to wokeism that has created divisions within our communities, to inhumanity, to misogyny that leads to sexual violence, to dehumanization. And that's actually what all the sexual violence and rape is all about, that they commit with GoPro cameras. That's easily dismissible by some kind of warped schizophrenia or radical evil. It's not. It is about dehumanization. It is about making what they see as inhumanity about shock and awe. And also, as a Navy guy, I'll tell you that ultimately we didn't necessarily accomplish our mission in Iraq, as we know, but we certainly defeated Saddam Hussein and his military. And we did it through shock and awe. So where's our shock and awe? Are we going to continue to be on defense, or are we going to have an offense of shock and awe? And it doesn't have to be through the corruption of what the Islamists and all the others who seek war on this planet do. We should have an offense that moves forward and has a proactive ideological movement of shock and awe of why we all embrace the West, why we embrace liberty, why we embrace freedom, and why we stand together with our Jewish brothers and sisters against anti-Semitism. And I'm here to tell you, as a Muslim with my fellow Muslim colleagues, that yes, many of us here have been truth tellers for some time, and we can sit here like the rooster in the morning and declare that we told you the sun was going to rise. And however, now we know that it's going to keep coming. The pandemic sort of put us to sleep for a few years, and while Hamas armed itself, and then comes an administration that tries to relieve sanctions from Iran, and next thing we know, they're committing an act of multiplicious war crimes against humanity by just crossing that little border and raping and savaging women and children and the vulnerable in orders of times that are 50 times greater than what we saw, 100 times greater than what we saw on 9/11. And yet America waged a war a just war against Afghanistan so that we could fight them over there so they wouldn't come here. And we waged a just war in Iraq. And there was hardly the outcry of what we see against Israel because they responded to an act, a declaration of barbarism against their people simply because they were Jewish. And yet the response is somehow different. As an American, I don't understand it. I talk to my colleagues in the Arabic, Muslim community, Iranian community, so many, and I ask them, I say, how could you not have had this same, if you're so much that you want just war, many of you felt we were in a just war to go get Al-Qaeda where they were camped out in caves in Afghanistan. We didn't leave Afghanistan that tidy, but we had a just war. And we need to co-opt their language. They talk about social justice, they talk about all these ideas. We need to co-opt the language of being just. You can't win wars by simply being pacifist. Yes, as a doctor, I'm not a fan of war, but I'm also a fan of ending wars. So in the last few minutes, I want to leave you with a few calls to action, if you will. Where do we go from here? First of all, we regain our history. And I have to tell you, I'm also have a congressional campaign in Phoenix, Arizona. And thank you. One of the things I'm noticing on the trail, in a very split district, by the way, is the main problem we have is not ignorance. It's not massive division. It's actually apathy. It is actually apathy. And as I talk to my kids and my family and they're energized, we teach our children, as all of you I'm sure do, which is why you're in this room. We teach our children to have a sense of legacy, that life is short. And you can't defeat an enemy that embraces itself in a flag of Islam or any religion unless you have a close relationship with God that you embrace and you believe is a relationship with God that you want to give your children and your children's children. So to all of you out there, build partnerships, reclaim the unity that brings us together, but allow people of faith to do it within the Muslim tradition because we are your best assets. But we're not simply part of the extension or an afterthought. We have to be lifted up, no different than the West lifted up Christian Reformation, Christian Enlightenment, that ultimately, think back, don't divorce yourself from history. Think back, the 30 Years' War, 8 to 10 million people perished in 30 years as there was wars against the establishment of a religion. That's where Islam is right now in its 1445th year. And I'm not saying that we need to send our sons and daughters to war, but if we want the wars like happened in Israel on October 7th to begin to end, not end tomorrow, that's never going to happen in this generation, but to begin to end, then we need to take sides within the house of Islam and lift our Muslim brothers and sisters that believe like we do as our equals and as our brothers and sisters. Second, we need to educate about radicalization. The left is being radicalized, aside from Islamism and all the stuff within our house of Islam. The left is being radicalized, which is why all of a sudden you see teenagers waving the Italian flag thinking it's a Palestinian flag, and then talking about the river, from the river to the sea. Gaslighting has become a standard operating procedure for spokespeople. Somehow the more caustic and shocking what they say is, it seems to stick more and be more representative of their constituency, which are the more and more extreme. So deploy your allies into the fabric of the nation so that when you find out who your allies are, lift them up on issues unrelated to foreign policy that seems so far away, as our economics are being destroyed by inflationary decisions, as our borders are being ignored and national security is being destroyed here domestically in our countries, as our families are being destroyed because of issues related to collectivism and gender debates and other things of identity politics, as our free speech is being destroyed because if you question your doctor or you question health policy, somehow you no longer have a right to speak out on social media or your social media gets shut down. So many parts of the debate that's happening. Disagreement is good. Debate is healthy. But we need to lift each other up aside from these core issues that relate to anti-Semitism and relate to counter-radicalization and things so specific. Most people I talk to on the trail don't really care that much about that, unfortunately. But what they care about is putting food on the table for their kids. They care about the schools their kids go to. And they care about whether drugs and foreign operatives are rushing into their districts to bring crime and pestilence from abroad. So we need to create these coalitions. What does an offense look like? It looks like passion, not apathy. It looks like understanding what the charter of Hamas says and the reform that you've heard from my colleagues here. It looks like reclaiming our institutions, whether it be military, government, media, universities. Every institution has been infiltrated by programs that were created 30, 40 years ago. So I think it's about time we start creating programs that our kids' will be talking about, that the West was saved by those who cared about liberty and freedom and started to deploy the ideas to bring us together. I want to leave you with one thought, which is when we talk about the Arab Spring, 2011 reminded us that all of you don't have to do the hard work in the Middle East. The people in the Middle East, the Iranians that want the Green Revolution to succeed against the theocrats, the Syrians that paid dearly fighting against chemical weapons from Assad, fighting against the radical Islamism of ISIS, the Egyptians that fought against both the Brotherhood and the LCCs and the National Democratic Party, so-called Democratic Party of Egypt, the Tunisians, the Libyans, all of them took 2 steps forward and then 6 steps back. That ratcheting forward and backward, as you know in the West, many revolutions happened before we got to our democracies, and then our democracies also took a step back into fascism in the early 20th century. So everything comes with passion, nothing comes with apathy, but we can't forget our history. We can't let movements destroy our history, our what we are. They were burning down cities in our country in the name of destroying our history rather than teaching about our history, which is what we need to reclaim in our offense against these movements. And it's not a surprise, by the way, that the Black Lives Matter movement that did a lot of that was led by some of the most vicious anti-Semites on the planet, including Louis Farrakhan and others. And this isn't a testimony, a criticism of everybody on the left. I'm talking about bringing back our center in America and in Canada and the West because it's being hijacked by the extremes on both sides. So last, they talk about real victims. We talk about the antiseptic of the sunlight, of the bigotry of low expectations. They talk about tribes, ethnicities. We talk about family. They talk about starting wars. We talk about ending them. What's our legacy? Will our legacy be apathy, forever wars, forever defense, or will it be about offense? As you leave here, partner with our communities, not as an afterthought, not as an appendage, but as real partners. Partner against the continuums that create things like misogyny, that leads to honor violence, that leads to honor killings, that leads to rape and sexual violence. There's a continuum there. So when an imam talks about the sisters upstairs that are behind a curtain, that's the beginning of an indoctrination that ends in sexual violence. And in the end, find your thread that binds us, that makes us a collective, as diverse as we are. Embrace ideological diversity and become blind to skin-deep diversity. And for the love of God, fight for it. We're by your side. Thank you.